Have you ever wanted to start animating but felt intimidated with complicated and expensive software? Don't know where or how to start? Well, Opentoonz is a free, fully featured animation software that is perfect to use for traditional frame-by-frame animation as well as cut-out puppet animations, with plenty of other features and special effects you can use. But with all these features available, how do you get started with simple hand-drawn animations? That's what I'll show you today as we begin animating with Opentoonz. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my introduction to using Opentoonz for traditional animation. Now before I begin, as with all my tutorials, I'd like to mention that there's a skippable contents list in the description below, so you can skip directly to the part that you need. So if you've already got Opentoonz installed, you can skip directly to the part for setting it up and doing the sketching. So today's example is going to be the simple bouncing ball, and we'll go through a very simple workflow of sketching, ink and painting, then outputting to a video file that you can share with your friends or put onto YouTube. So let's go ahead and download Opentoonz. So firstly, you've got to consider which version of Opentoonz you want to download. There's currently 3 versions and all of them are free, and all the links are down below in the description. Firstly, there's the official version of Opentoonz that you can see on the screen here, and you simply hit the download button and download and install as you would for any other software. I won't be using this today because I prefer a different version which I'll show you in a second. Secondly, there's the Moravna edition. This is based on the official version of Opentoonz, but will have a few extra features. And to get hold of it, you simply click on the download link on the front page, and this will take you to a new page where you can choose to donate a fee to the developers if you wish, and hit the I want this button and install as normal. Finally, there's the OTX version, or Opentoonz Experimental, and this is the version I'll be using today. And again, you can donate to the developers by entering your donation amount here, and clicking I want this. You'll enter your email address and then be sent a link to download it. So you just download the zip file contained in the link and then unzip it, and then inside that folder you'll find the executable, so just run that, and then you see the startup dialog. Now all of your work is based around scenes within a project. And when you first come to Opentoonz, you might want to experiment, so there's already a sandbox project you can use, and you choose a new scene name, and inside that scene you can start to scribble, play with all of the tools, and work your way around the software. But if you want to do something more substantial than just working out how the software works, you should create a new project, so hit the new project button. So for today's demo, we'll be drawing the iconic bouncing ball. So we'll call the project Bouncing Ball. And then for the scene name, we'll just call it BB Scene 1. And on this page you can choose a few project settings. So the standard resolution here is HD of 1920x1080. You can change that to be either 4K or down to a low resolution with the screen ratio size of 16:9 or a different ratio size altogether. Or you can just type the figures into the resolution boxes here. And we'll stick with the standard frame rate of 24, that suits our purposes, and we'll just hit create scene. Okay, so here's the first standard interface for Opentoonz, and the layout can be separated based on the task in hand. So you can see there's a basics room we're looking at, there's also a room for cleanup, one for drawing, one for animation, etc. And you can add new rooms or delete old rooms by right clicking on the tabs and choosing new or delete. And you can change the layout of each room by resizing each of the elements or by removing them entirely by dragging them away from the docked area and just pressing X in the corner. And you can bring them back by going to the Windows menu and selecting them. So I'll just reorder this room to make today's tutorial run smoother. Firstly, I'll move the X sheet area to the top, and I'll change it into a timeline by pressing the button that says X sheet, and then it changes to a timeline view where each of the frames move left to right, and you can press the timeline button again to go back to the X sheet if you'd like to do so. Okay, now to put the toolbar on the far left. The level strip will be fine at the side here, and the level palette at the top. And I'll just resize all of this to fit on the large screen. There we go. Finally, I'd expand the toolbar to show all of the tools. So let's take a little look at the UI then. So the top timeline area is where all the frames go as you draw your animation. The right hand side is the level strip, which shows all of the drawings that can be on a frame in the timeline, but we'll take a look at that later. The level palette here shows any styles that you're using on your current level. At the bottom here is the palette. We can choose the style and colour for each of the pens. And in the centre here is the main drawing table. So let's first resize that so you can see more of it. At the bottom here are 3 tools that you use to change the position of the page. The first one is the zoom tool. If you select that, you can then click and drag towards the centre and it resizes the table. The next one is the rotate tool to rotate the table, which is handy. And then at the bottom is the pan tool to click and drag to move the table around. Okay, so let's start sketching. So the first thing we want to do is to bring up the toolbar on the timeline. And the way we do this is you right click on a column here and you choose toggle X sheet toolbar. Now the word timeline and X sheet are interchangeable in the program, so where you see one it means the other. So this gives us access to some of the core features that we need in the timeline. And the first thing we want to do is to create a level, which is the equivalent of a layer in other drawing and animation programs. And we've got 3 types of levels to choose from. There's a vector layer that we'll use later for the neat and ink and paint section. There's a Toonz raster and a standard raster level. Now we'll use a raster level because this allows us to use different kinds of brushes and is more flexible for sketching. So we'll call this sketch. And you can see at the right hand side in the level strip, it now shows sketch as being the current level, and it shows one piece of paper ready for you to draw on. And in the timeline, in frame 1, you can see that piece of paper and the word sketch written there. And the first thing we'll do is we'll change the name of the column to sketch as well. That'll make the column easier to find later on when we've got multiple columns in there. Okay, so the first thing to do is we'll select the brush tool over here on the left. And then for sketching, I like to use the pencil tool. So we'll come here to the palette, right click and choose new style. And it always creates it based on the previous style. So we've got a black pen we could use, but we don't want to use that. We want to use the raster pencil. So you come down into the selector, choose the raster section, and you get to see all of the brushes you can choose from. And you've got painting brushes, you've got felt tip pens, crayons and that kind of thing. And the one we want to use is the pencil. So we select it. And you notice that the thumbnail changes to be the pencil. But if it doesn't, hit the apply button at the bottom and it'll be set. And now I can simply sketch with the pencil. So for the bouncing ball, we're going to have it drop from the very top of the screen down to the bottom and then bounce back up to the top. So the first thing we'll add is the ground level by drawing a rough line across the page, and then we'll draw the ball. Okay, so the ball's going to slowly accelerate from the top to the bottom, so the first few drawings need to be close together and then spaced further apart. So we'll start drawing straight ahead and then we'll look at inbetweening later. So let's go to frame 2. So as we go to frame 2, of course, the ground disappears, and this is where onion skinning can come in. So at the top of the current frame you can see this circle, and this is the onion skin indicator. And when you show any frames using onion skin, any frames to the left will be shown in red, and any frames to the right will be shown in green. To turn on onion skin, you simply hover above the frame you want to onion skin, and if you move up and down, you see there's 2 yellow buttons you can press. The bottom one is a relative onion skin. If you turn that on, it'll show the previous frame. So on frame 2 it shows frame 1. If I move to frame 3, it would show frame 2. Move to frame 4, it would show frame 3. I just click it again to turn it off. And if you click the top button, you'll notice there's no connector line between the current frame and that button, which means that when you go to any other frame, it'll still continue to show frame 1. And this is really useful to see the ground level across all of the frames. So we'll leave frame 1 turned on, so we can see that from any other location, and we'll turn on the onion skin for the previous frame. So let's go ahead and draw some of these frames in. So you notice that as soon as I started drawing on frame 2, the second page showed in the level strip. Also, the ball is drawn off centre, but we can fix this. All we need to do is to click the selection tool on the top left, and you'll notice that the type is set to rectangular. And then you draw a rectangle by clicking and dragging around the ball, and you can then reposition frame 2 to where you need to. You can also resize it by clicking and dragging on the drag handles and click away. Now if the item you want to select isn't the only thing on screen, you might want to change the type of selection to freehand or polyline. And the freehand tool allows you to draw any shape and anything within that area will be selected. So I'll go ahead and draw some more frames. Okay, so this frame is where the ball touches the floor, so the next couple of frames are where the ball is going to squash down and slow into its very bottom position before springing back up and moving into the air. So I'll just do those. Okay, so that's the full downward movement, and I've been drawing all of these frames straight ahead. And for a simple animation like a bouncing ball, that's perfectly fine. But for more complex animations, you might be better off drawing keyframes and then in-betweening them. Now I'll show this here with the next couple of frames. So if we go from the lowest bounce and draw the ball fully stretched out. So on frame 12, the ball is fully squashed, and 13, it's stretched out. So in between these two, we want to draw the ball extending. So all we need to do is make sure we're on frame 13 and press the insert key. And that moves frame 13 forward and leaves a blank frame in between 12 and 13. And as we're currently only underskinning the previous frame, let's also show the following frame. So it's quite faint, but I can just see it in there. You can change these colours in the preferences, but I won't do that today. So on the new frame 13, we want the ball to be not quite fully stretched and still a little bit wide. Something like that. So if we take a look at that, we can see the ball stretching up, that's fine. But you notice that the drawing numbers are now not consecutive, because the last drawing we made was the 14th drawing, but it's now in the 13th keyframe position. And this is where it's important to know the difference between the frame numbers of the animation and the page numbers within a level. But we can make them the same. All we need to do is to select the first drawing in the timeline, hold shift and select the last drawing, then right click and choose auto renumber, and that's it. You'll see that frame 13 has now got drawing number 13 on, and frame 14 has got drawing number 14 on. So I'll just continue with the rest of the sketches. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Hitting play plays it through once, and next to it is the loop button that plays the full cycle. That's not too bad, but it seems to be moving a little bit too quick at the very top and bottom, so what we can do is to hold each of the two extreme frames for a second frame. And there's two ways to do this. One is to select the frame, and you'll see this little handle next to it. You can click and drag that, which will hold drawing number 1 on 2 frames, and then change on frame number 3. And the second way, if we look at the bottom frame, which is animation frame number 12, drawing number 11, to hold that onto 2 frames, we can simply press the 2's button to put that frame onto 2's. And you'll see it extended it across from frame 12 to 13. So let's take a look at that. Good, so let's draw that in neat at the inking stage. So the first thing we'll do is we'll add 2 new layers, and we'll make them vector layers. And I'll use vector because this gives you a clean line, and the animation can be resized without losing any clarity. So we'll add a vector layer, and we'll call this one ground, to draw the ground onto, and then we'll add a second vector layer for the ball. Okay, so we'll resize the timeline view so we can see that. And you'll notice it's created 1 frame for each of the 2 layers, and it's put them on key number 7 because that's where the cursor last was. So I can simply drag that frame across to frame 1, and the same for the ball. And as with the sketch layer, we'll rename the column so it's easier to see. And then we'll also lock the sketch layer by clicking the button beneath the padlock so we don't accidentally draw in it or alter it. And you'll see we've got this new dotted line across the top to show it's been locked. So let's take a look at the other options for each layer. So this column shows a picture of the table, and if we untick that button, you'll notice the animation disappears from the table. So we need to see that. And on the far left is the output visibility. So if we untick that, the sketch layer won't appear in the final output. So firstly we'll draw the ground. Now we could just use the brush tool and simply draw the ground in. And later, if we wanted to colour this in, we'd also have to enclose that area with another line, and then we could fill in the centre with the colour. But I won't do that for this, because I'd like to show you another tool, which is the geometric tool. If you select that, you can then draw geometric shapes, rectangles, circles, ellipses, and various others. So I'll choose the rectangle tool, and I simply click and drag to draw a rectangle, which I can then fill in with colour when we get to the inking stage. So the ground I've drawn on frame 1, you'll notice as we move to other frames the ground disappears because it's only shown on frame 1. So we need to extend this to the whole of the animation. And to do that you simply select the frame you want to extend and then grab the handle that appears and extend it to the end of the animation. And now as you preview the animation, you can see the ground on all of the frames. So let's draw the ball. Okay, so the way we'll draw the ball is to use the geometric tools again and to choose the circle tool. So you simply drag from the centre, make it approximately the right size, and then you can use the selection tool to highlight it and to move it to where you want. Now in the sketch, drawing 1 was extended over 2 frames, so we'll do the same with this drawing by dragging the handle. And then to save drawing the circle on each frame and having it potentially change size, as it does on the sketch layer, we'll select the circle, hit Ctrl+C to copy it, and then we'll paste the circle on each frame and just adjust it for the squash and stretch. So let's go to frame 3 and hit Ctrl+V to paste it, select it, and then move it down to where the sketch is. So I'll just do that for the rest of the frames. Okay, so let's just take a look at that. So we'll turn off the sketch layer so we can just see the final ink layers and hit the loop play. Yeah, that's fine. So what we can do now is to move on to the ink stage. And because we want to keep the black outline, we'll create a new palette colour by right clicking and choosing new style, and then simply clicking the right hand side to move the value away from the black area and choose the colour. So we'll take a nice green colour there. And then select the bucket fill tool and click anywhere inside the rectangle. And because the one drawing goes across all 24 frames, there's no need to colour any more frames in. So let's colour in the ball, and you'll notice that the palette here is just for the ground level. So as we change the first keyframe for the ball, the green ground colour isn't shown. So let's add a new colour for the ball. So we'll right click again, choose new style, and for the new style we'll just pick a bright red colour. So all we need to do is to click anywhere in the middle of the circle, and then using the arrow keys, move across one frame at a time and colour in all of the frames. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So that's the animation set up and working in Opentoonz. But how do you build it into a video file to share with your friends or put onto YouTube? Well, that's where rendering comes in. So to create a video file, first you have to go to the output settings under File, and here you can make adjustments to the actual resolution you're outputting to. And remember, for animations made up of entirely vector layers, you can choose any resolution and it will rescale. But make sure you stick to the same ratio, whether it be 16:9, 4:3 or whatever. Otherwise the sides or top could be cut off. So I'll leave this as standard 1080p HD. The final render will appear in the outputs folder, I'll show you that in a second. You can name the output file here, and this drop down determines the output type, and by default it outputs TIFF images, one for each frame. You can also choose JPEG or PNG, but we want a video, so we either choose MOV or AVI. You can see all of the options for this output type by pressing the options button. For most animations there's no need to change any of the options, and then simply hit render. And depending on the number of frames you have, the output type and the quality options will vary the amount of time it takes to render it. When it's complete, it opens its flipbook with the animation in. and then you can hit play to watch the animation in here. And you can find the generated file in the same location as where the application is, in the subfolder called Portable Stuff, and then Projects, the name of your project, and then in Outputs folder. And there it is. But to save disk space, and if you intend to upload the video to YouTube, the recommended format is an MP4. And you can output to this, but first you need to download an encoder. So head off to the FFmpeg website, link down below. Choose your version, architecture and linking. The defaults are fine for my Windows 10 64-bit version, so I'll just hit download build. That goes into my downloads folder. Then once downloaded, just extract it. And then move the extracted folder to somewhere where you can find it on your computer. So I'll move that into my C drive. Then what we'll need to do is we'll need to put Opentoonz into the bin folder where FFmpeg.exe is. I just go to the Preferences window by going to File, Preferences. Then under Import Export, browse to the FFmpeg bin folder. And then just press Choose. And then I suggest adjusting the timeout, instead of being 60 seconds to 120. And this will save some of the first issues you may have when you first start using FFmpeg. And as it says at the bottom, changes take effect the next time you run Toonz. So if we close this down and close Toonz and restart it. And now when you go to the output settings, inside the output types, you'll notice MP4. So if we hit render, and if you look in your outputs folder, there's now an MP4 version. And the difference in file size is now 90k compared to the AVI being 189 megabytes, quite a huge difference. And obviously once you've got your output settings set up for your project, you don't need to open the dialog again, you can go straight to the render button. So today we've downloaded, set up and run Opentoonz, we sketched out the rough animation, completed the final ink and paint, and then rendered it out to a file that can be used for YouTube. Now Opentoonz has plenty more features that you can use, and I'll be featuring these in upcoming tutorials, including using different colouring effects as you can see here. And next week I'll be looking at adding special effects to an animation, so why not subscribe now so you don't miss them. And I'll be back next Friday with another video, and that's a guarantee.